Welcome to Let Me Know How It Is, a pop culture podcast about TV, movies, comics, and all things geek. We're talking Hollywood blockbusters today. I'm Zach Slater.
I'm Frank Melman.
This is Tommy Smithereen.
And I'm Clifton.
All right, so we are attacking this subject kind of broadly, but as part of it, we'll explore the history of blockbusters and what we think makes them successful, what they have in common with each other, and we'll also be predicting which new releases might become huge box office blockbusters in the future. So, with that said, this is our 80th episode, and unfortunately, the stars didn't align for us to do our Captain America 80th as our 80th episode, but we wanted to do that for July 4th, so the stars didn't align. But so here we are, blockbusters for number 80. So we should start, I guess, with actually the actual definition of what a blockbuster is. Who wants to take a stab at it?
Well, unofficially, I just thought it was a tentpole movie that came out during the summer, which everyone wanted to see at once, regardless of the theme of it, whether it's sci-fi, fantasy. It was just something that you wanted to take your family to go see, or everyone, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never looked anything up on it, but the adage, the phrase blockbuster, I'd always either deduced or had heard, came from just the idea of people standing around a block in line for a movie, which is what used to happen in the 70s.
Interesting. I did not hear that part. I had initially thought, somewhere in my life, I had heard the fact that a blockbuster, to be considered one, you had to make a certain percentage like over the budget, right, in the box office, which I had thought that for the longest time, but I didn't find anything about that digging it up today. But I was surprised. So like some of the reports I was reading that the term did go back to the 40s.
Okay.
In some instances, but it was used kind of differently. It was used as sort of like an advertising adage, right? It was like, actually using the metaphor of the bomb itself, right? Okay. So it was like, this movie will tug on your heartstrings like, like a blockbuster bomb, stuff like that. And that got dropped after World War II, but apparently in the 50s, Variety used the term blockbuster in an article that was describing like high budget, like high spectacle movies that Hollywood was making. Okay. And by that point, it was sort of like in the vernacular, it was sort of an industry term at the time, but it kind of like disappeared. And then my finding was it kind of coalesces around Jaws, right. The use of the term.
Jaws is what I've always heard is like the big blockbuster, modern blockbuster as we know it film.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that's I've heard that as sort of like that's the movie that starts the blockbuster era, essentially. Mm-hmm. And then so that's 75, and then Star Wars comes along 2 years later and just, blows that out of proportion.
Out of the water.
Even more so, right? Like, I should have said out of the water. Why didn't I say
You should have. I was like, it's right there.
Try this over again. So Star Wars comes out 2 years later and blows it out of the water.
There you go.
As if shooting a tank that has explosive gas in it.
Right. Yeah. I was always in the impression that blockbuster meant it was something that you physically had to get up and go see in a theater. I mean, granted, now it's a lot different where we are. Where some movies get released at the same time streaming as well as in theaters. But like to me, it was always the idea that it had to be you haven't seen that, you got to go see that. You have have to go now and go see it. Yeah. That was always a feeling I always got with those. And like Clifton was saying, the thing about standing in line also was the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Like the idea that you were going to be outside of a theater or outside of a box office waiting to get in to see something. Was always the idea that I had.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the definition I was finding more and more as I was looking into it was essentially like it's a movie with immense popularity and box office success. Mm-hmm. Like that's kind of it. It's like I guess like really today I guess that's more known as like event movies, right? Also like which is a term I've heard kind of flying around from time to time. But yeah, so the 70s. So what was your guys' experience with like Jaws and Star Wars? Did you guys see these in the theaters at the time? Was there something different about these?
Personally, I didn't.
Jaws I didn't see.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jaws was a little before a time. I mean, the only thing I remember about Jaws at the time was like my mom tells a story about being pregnant and worried seeing Jaws and then regretting it because she had nightmares about Jaws around the time that I was, not quite here. So there was that. Star Wars though was probably the first one that I can remember being in a theater to see.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that. Like I think I've told the story before in other episodes of being like seeing it with my family, and then the next night or the night after, a bunch of friends' parents were like, "Hey, we're taking a wood panel station wagon to the drive-in to see Star Wars."
Oh wow!
And gathering up all the kids in the neighborhood that wanted to go.
Yeah,
Yep.
Everyone just jumps in the back.
Right? Yeah,
Yep.
Of course, no seatbelts. It was a different time, and we all went to see Star Wars in a drive-in. That's like I remember seeing because I know I saw Star Wars like a couple times within a couple days, so I knew it was like one of those things where that was like a moment I can delineate that there was things that before Star Wars and things after Star Wars, and there was always some kind of mindset about going to see a big movie after Star Wars.
Right. Okay. Tommy, Clifton, what about you guys?
I think I brought up the fact of how many times I've almost didn't see Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
As far,
Okay.
but that wasn't the first. The first was the one after that, which was Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yeah, I clearly remember. I knew nothing about the movie at the time. All I know, my grandmother said the Bible was in it.
It's a good Sunday school movie.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? That's okay. And then we see it. I was looking for the Bible the whole movie. I didn't see it. But
there's some Bible stuff in it.
Yeah, there's Bible. Yes, there's Bible
So
stuff.
you didn't see Star Wars in the theater, the original?
Oh, not even remotely. No, I barely even almost didn't get to see Empire Strikes Back in movie theaters.
Right.
Yeah. I've told you that story though, right?
I don't know. Why don't you tell it?
Okay, all right.
Go ahead. I remember this. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, basically, my mother worked at the movie theaters, ironically so. And at the time, right after my father picked us up from school, he'd take us to pick up my mother.
Mhm.
Well, every time he picked us up, I was able to sneak in and see the beginning, almost the beginning of Empire. And like clockwork, he'd take us out. So I only saw, every time I came in the movie theater, all I saw was Luke beaten and battered for whatever reason. I don't know why. And he's taken upside down. And then he kills the beast and runs off, and that's all I saw.
The Wampa.
Oh,
Yes.
the Wampa. Okay. I thought you meant hanging upside down from the antenna at Cloud City.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Hanging upside down in ice in
Right.
the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the crazy part is I've seen that scene like 12 times without fail. Didn't know how he got there. Didn't know where the movie was going after that. And I never saw it until it came to video.
Wow.
Yeah, torture.
I remember with Empire, for me, it was I had gotten the packs of trading cards. And it was if I remember correctly, it was, the trading cards were like the characters, each character had a card and there was a bio or whatever on the back. And then they had like the ships, like the Star Destroyer and the TIE Fighters and all that stuff. And I had a bunch of those and I couldn't wait to go. And I remember one, same thing. A friend of mine was going, his mom was like, we're going to go see Empire Strikes Back, like the afternoon that it opened. And I remember we saw it, and then my dad, good-heartedly giving me a hard time about the fact that I went without him and saw it before him. Like, I remember that. But I know with Raiders, I've told this story, I think, a couple times in other episodes, was Raiders was my dad was out of town, like on business, like doing work out of, I think it was not out of the state, which is in state, but out of town. And he had saw Raiders the night before, like with a bunch of guys that he was there from his office. And the same thing where he came home and was like, hey, there's this movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark. We have to go see this movie again.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we went, and it was, melting Nazis and, a little bit of Bible stuff and Indiana Jones, and it was awesome. So, but that was one of those things where I remember, my dad's not hugely into pop culture stuff, but I definitely remember it as a time where he was definitely like, no, we're not, let's go. We're doing this now.
Okay.
So
let's go. This is awesome.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I love that story.
Again. Yeah.
It's a great that's
memory.
almost the Boy Meets World episode. You know that.
Almost.
Yeah. What about you, Clifton? With Star Wars, I want to stick on Star Wars just for a bit.
Right. With Star Wars again, like a little before my time. Back then, back in the olden days, back before, this is back before VHS, before even beta. Like they existed, but they weren't common. I think they existed in the late 70s, but certainly weren't common. My house didn't have one until the mid 80s. but like movies would get second and third runs. Like movies would just keep coming back to movie theaters because there was no home video.
Right.
There was no home video market until the very early days. Around Star Wars was when you got the early days of the home video markets in the early 80s. So, like when I was a kid, I probably saw Star Wars at a later run of its times through the theater. I don't really remember seeing it in the theater. Empire Strikes Back, I have vague memories of seeing on again, probably a second or third run through the theaters. But it was Return of the Jedi is the one I remember. And I do remember that because, again, back in the olden days, you couldn't get your tickets in advance, really. Like, nobody was selling tickets to movies before they came out. You could, at best, go the day that a movie opened and buy a ticket for later that day. Mm-hmm. And that's what my dad did for Return of the Jedi. And went down at lunchtime and bought tickets for like the afternoon show, like when they started showing it, and then came and got my sister and I from school and took us from school straight to the movie theater to see Return of the Jedi. So that's my first memory of it. And I do remember standing in like the line of people all waiting to go into the theater. And I do have memories of all that because it was probably the first time that ever happened in any of my movie going experiences.
Yeah, my Star Wars story is not really all that great. I was a little young, so I didn't coincide with this movie being released. So my Star Wars story is we had like a VHS tape of it that was like recorded. So like I don't know if my parents bought like a bootleg or if they recorded it off a TV or something. I don't know what the deal is here, but I saw it very, very young, and like Darth Vader scared the crap out of me. Mm-hmm. And like I would run away from the screen and like go into the other room and stuff. And then I didn't watch Star Wars ever until I was like 11. when the THX remastered VHS tapes came out. And that's when I got into Star Wars. So really, like, I don't have a Blockbuster line around the block story until, interestingly, Phantom Menace. Like that's kind of like the first time I ever had to stand in line that, like, literally I'm watching it go around the block for people to get in, which is kind of an interesting thing. But I mean, Star Wars, from my understanding, like it ran for a year straight, practically, which I like was unheard of at the time, right? Like no movie ran for that long in the theater, like continuously, right? Mm-hmm. It was also like the moment where, like we said, like Jaws was a big deal, but Star Wars comes out and like this becomes the moment where like studios start chasing the success of films to be blockbusters more and more. So they start like greenlighting bigger budget epic films in the hopes to sort of capture the Star Wars magic, right? Mm-hmm. And then this is when we get like a lot of our favorites. Lot of like everybody's favorites in like the 80s stuff, right? Like Alien is greenlit, and the Back to the Future movies, and Ghostbusters, and all that awesome stuff in the 80s starts coming out, like with the mindset of like, let's try and make a movie that's gonna have a big seismic impact on the pop culture, on society, right? Like an event thing where everybody's got to go see it, right? And there's a lot of those in the 80s, right? Mm-hmm. Which, like you guys were saying, Raiders of the Lost Ark and everything, you guys had a lot of stories with that, like seeing it yourself.
Yeah, I thought. Well, I mean, I still have one more for Return of the Jedi.
Oh, okay.
Just real quick, it was again. I remember the time of like we got tickets early, we went and got lunch and came back to get in line. And by the time we got back in line in the afternoon show, it was like 3 p.m. on a Sunday, and it was jam packed, people outside of this theater, and it was a huge theater that had people could line up, and I'd never seen it like this before. I'd been going to this theater since I was a kid, like really young. And I remember being there with my family, and someone tried to cut in front of us. And it's one of the few times my father's not a very confrontational or angry person, but it's one of the few times I've ever seen my father just let someone know immediately in the moment what he thought about trying to cut in front of us for this movie. And I think back and I think, well, is it the Star Wars avenue, or is just the idea of, because along with the idea that you couldn't necessarily pre-buy tickets months in advance, the other thing that I don't know if everyone realizes is, it was kind of a free-for-all to get seats, right? Oh yeah. It's like I feel like there's a big difference now where I'm like, I'm going to buy my seats in this row in this spot, and I don't have to worry about whether or not I'm able to see the theater. I think the last time I saw a movie in the theater where I had really bad seats was it was a while ago. I can't remember for sure what it was.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's something to keep in mind when we're talking about Blockbusters, is the idea that, in the old days, it was a lot different because, unless you wanted to watch, we've talked about that before. We've had those experiences of watching from the first or second row
Mm-hmm.
and how awful that experience is for a movie.
Yep.
So.
Or you go in a big group and you can't sit together because you can't find that many seats.
There's that as well, yeah.
I don't miss that at all. I don't miss the saving seats. I don't miss the free-for-all. You're right.
The mad dash.
The assigned seats that you're buying is the most wonderful addition to the theater experience I can recall.
Sure. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know I remember just this. Are we doing these out of order? Does it matter? We don't have to do them chronologically, right?
No, you can jump around here.
I remember when we went to see Dark Knight.
Mm.
Speaking of not being able to get a seat together, I remember we got tickets, a group of us went, and we got tickets, and it was one of those things where it was a mad dash to get to the theater, right? There was 5 or 6 different theaters that were staggered time-wise on when you could get in, and they sent us to this one theater, and it was packed. And I'm like, oh, there's no way in the world we're going to get to be able to sit anywhere near each other. And then it became a thing of well, F it, I'm just going to go into a theater that has Dark Knight on the front and see what it's like in there.
Right.
And and sure enough, there was 8 people in that theater that they had let in there at that point. So I tried to call people, and I remember just having that panic of, we don't have seats together, but I'm trying to call people for whatever reason. The cell reception's terrible, and I had to tell someone I'm in a theater that we're not supposed to be in, so we could all sit together.
Yeah.
And that wasn't too long ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that was that. I remember also some guy getting kind of pushy with you, right, where he's like, "You can't save that many seats." And you're like, "Yes, I can."
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, "Oh, what's happening here?"
Sure, I can.
Yeah,
I'm doing it. Watch me. Yes.
Dark Knight was the first time I can recall also that you're in a packed theater waiting for this thing to start,
right?
And you would have theater workers come to the front and be like, you know what, we opened more screens for this, would actually come down to the floor and make an announcement.
Yeah,
they're like, we now have more screens if you guys want to split up. I was like, yeah. that I've never heard. Where somebody comes in and just tells you.
Oh no, well, to me, I had 2. One was for T2.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
The madness of that was insane, and another Star Wars was Phantom Menace, in which, being that we had no Star Wars movies for over a decade, when that popped up on the horizon and people went to go see that was the return of the waiting in line for tickets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but not T2 especially with the adding more screens in order to see it because it just got bigger and bigger.
Right.
Yeah.
I was working in a movie theater at the time for T2.
Mm-hmm.
So it was one of those things where they had a lot of times when there was really big blockbuster movies, you would have I wouldn't, but I would be able to go to them. The projectionist who was ever working would have to put those prints together. So they would put the print together for the night, and then as the projectionist, you're supposed to stay after and watch to make sure the print's okay, or that it's print's in order, or there's not a problem, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
So when they had big movies like T2, I remember seeing T2 the night before, Thursday, on a Thursday night at 12, a midnight show that wasn't allowed, the public wasn't allowed. You could bring your friend with you if you worked there. So I was able to see T2 I saw early. I saw Batman, the 89 Batman, I saw it that way too.
Mm-hmm.
Where I went to a midnight show at the movie theater that I worked at and got to see it early.
Right, because the projectionist is making sure the print works.
Right.
Right.
I mean, one of my best friends was a projectionist anyway, so it was one of those things where, there were plenty of making a 7-Eleven run and coming back and watching 2 movies till about 4 a.m. just to make sure that the quote unquote the print was okay.
Right.
But this one, when they were bigger movies and they knew full well the staff wasn't going to be able to see them because you'd have to work a weekend. I mean, I think I've told that story where I worked the summer of '89, so it was Batman and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Lethal Weapon 2 and
right.
What else was that year?
Indiana Jones, Last Crusade.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Last Crusade was that year. So there was a lot of stuff that I got to see early because, otherwise I wouldn't have seen it till the Monday or Tuesday that I was off. But those were, working the box office those weekends where, you were doing a lot of business that way.
So, I mean, the thing that a lot of these movies all have in common at this point is like blockbusters tended to always be released summer.
Right.
Right? Like you typically got June, July, right? Were when your big ones. Clifton, you were saying that Star Wars like always came out in May, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Star Wars was always mid-May releases.
It was always a mid-May release for all of them. The originals, prequels.
For the originals and the prequels up until Force Awakens.
Right.
That's when they went winter on Force Awakens.
Right.
Jaws was a June release. So Jaws was like a right after school ended release, which is what, like, for a long time I thought of as like the big summer tentpole movie was what they wanted to hit right after most of the kids got out of school. So you're looking around June 20th to cover most of the school, how the different schools work in the different regions. And Jaws is squarely that.
Right. Mm-hmm. That was my mindset for a long time when I started becoming like a movie fan and started like living at the theater in the summer. Like I always look forward to like to June and July because that's when it was like every weekend was, something cool was coming out that I was interested in. And then stuff kind of like trickled off a little bit in August. Like there were some okay size releases in August, but there was not really like the huge movies kind of like came and went by that point when you got to August. Yeah. But then I recalled like 97 was when I think Deep Impact came out. I think it was 97.
Okay.
And that was because at that time I started like not only watching movies a lot, but kind of like following like how movies were doing and going to like websites like Box Office Guru and stuff like that. And kind of checking like how movies were performing. And that was the first time that I recalled hearing people say that there's kind of like something happening with May here where there's these movies that are coming out around Memorial Day are typically doing better and better and better. Right. And then that's the first time I noticed that the summer movie season, the blockbuster season got kind of like pushed. It wasn't just June and July. It was also like tail end of May.
Yeah. Yeah. I did notice some trends about that. And I do just remember some trends about that happening. But the other thing notable in 97 was Titanic, which was a December release and was the highest grossing movie of that year, still one of the highest grossing movies of all time. And that was an unexpected blockbuster to a degree. I'm like, they wanted it to do well, but it was placed in December to be Oscar bait, really.
Right. Yeah.
It was an Oscar bait movie. And that just happened to do the numbers of Star Wars. And I think that was a bit unexpected, but then it did open up people's eyes to be like, oh, like December can get us some money too in the right situation. They weren't able to replicate it until later, but then they have since.
Right.
But yeah, so 97 opened up December, like you said, in May is getting a little earlier.
Yeah. And
then when I remember May becoming blockbuster season is Spider-Man 1 in 2002 with an opening of the first weekend in May. And that's when I remember, now your first week of May is blockbuster season's official beginning and has been ever since.
Right.
Or at least the summer movie season has been ever since.
Yeah. And I remember Iron Man was a May release.
Yeah.
Spider-Man,
I think X-Men 2, Spider-Man 2, X-Men 3, or Spider-Man 3. I mean, you started getting a coinciding of whatever the biggest superhero movie of the year was going to be was trying to open the first weekend in May, which coincidentally also happened to become Free Comic Book Day.
Yeah.
So there was some comic book synergy going on because I think the first Free Comic Book Day was that first Saturday in May of 2002 when the first Spider-Man movie opened. And so that's another thing that people jumped onto there and has been going since.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to see how it's and now today it's sort of like they can happen anywhere. I feel like, right? I mean, you get like these movies that kind of come out, like we were saying, like Titanic in 97. It opens up like certain a movie can do well because I feel like that studios and we're kind of superstitious about certain release dates just based off of past history, just nothing it was sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy where like nothing big was coming out like in February.
Right.
So nothing wanted to get a February release.
Yeah.
You know, it's because people weren't going.
Yeah, February, like January, February is like the dead movies. Like the movies they didn't think anyone would go to see, they'd put out in January and February.
Right.
Is the truth.
And
there.
really even March too for a while. And then I remember like 300 being a big hit in March and that being kind of like, oh, okay. And so there's evidence where if you just like people will go to a good movie when anywhere in the calendar year. And then like, and you know, the big exception to the rule for February is Black Panther.
Right.
Yeah,
I was going to say, so like Titanic, like I mentioned before, was I think an accidental hit. Nobody expected it to be that big as a December release in 97. But then Avatar was released at the same time as Titanic had been. It was a December release in 2009. And they were banking on it doing those numbers.
Right.
They did plan for it to be a blockbuster. And then, like the ones you're talking about, like when they broke up into other seasons, yeah, like Black Panther shattered February records, and now you can basically get a hit any month.
Right.
If you can do February, which used to be like the cinematic graveyard for sure. And now you've got like a massive, like record-breaking movie coming out of that month.
Yeah, exactly. And now, and I feel like that they're becoming less superstitious about that. I mean, like you could find like, you know, exceptions here and there. Like our engineer just posted, just sent us some notes that were like Deadpool was a February release also, which, you know, that was also, I think, on some level, a bit of a surprise in people, like how well it did. You know, even though I think comic fans knew if you had Ryan Reynolds play that character, fun things were going to happen. But I think that movie surprised people. And the other one was Passion of the Christ that was released in February, which I think to this day is still like the highest grossing like R-rated movie.
Well, Deadpool beat it.
Deadpool did beat it? Okay.
Yes. Deadpool beat the Jesus movie.
Interesting. They're both February releases, but yeah.
And I don't know if anything's beaten Deadpool yet, but I do know Deadpool beat Passion of the Christ.
Okay.
Similar themes.
Yeah. I often confuse the two.
Yeah. Well, they both come back.
Right. They die and come back. It's the same story.
That's what I said. Similar themes. But I think, you know, when I think about blockbusters, I think of, you know, I think we're kind of remiss that we're not talking about, like for me, I remember for a while there, it was every July, Will Smith owned July.
Sure.
Right? I mean, when we think about like Independence Day, right? And what else was there? There was
Wild West. Oh.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But you meant to say it's Men in Black.
Men in Black. Exactly. Yep. That's the other one I was thinking of. But I mean, for a while there, he was, you know, they were selling any big blockbuster movie had Will in it, you know, and a song. There was synergy there. There was a song of some sort that come along with it. And he would own, you know, not necessarily own the summer. Sometimes he did. But, you know, I think back to like something like when E.T. was a blockbuster.
Yeah.
And the idea that, I mean, granted, there was no internet, there was no streaming, there wasn't, you know, cable was a thing, obviously, but, you know, I just think about blockbusters to me. At one point in my life, I remember blockbusters were pretty much around for the summer.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you could go in basically any time in the 3-month span of June, July, or August and know that this movie was going to be in the movie theater if you wanted to go watch it. And obviously we don't have that anymore because, you know, that's not the model that's set up anymore. But,
right.
Now, I feel like Tom Cruise owned that spot as well.
Yeah. Definitely. I would say that too.
So quick note from our engineer. Apparently Joker is the highest grossing R-rated movie now.
Huh.
Apparently. So Joker beat Deadpool, who
apparently
beat Jesus.
Joker. Yeah, apparently it was the record was broken not all that long ago. But yeah, no, I'm with you with Will Smith owning July 4th for a little while. You know, I mean, and that was, I mean, like his star was never brighter than that point, than like, you know, 96 Independence Day, 97 Men in Black. And for me, Independence Day was kind of like an important like movie going event for me in my development, because that was like there was just something about like that visual, the trailer of like not even like the flying saucer like casting the shadow over the city, which you guys later told me like, oh, that's taken from V.
Yeah, they stole it from
the miniseries.
It's borrowed a little bit,
but like that shot, the shot of like the Empire State Building blowing up and the shot of the White House blowing up.
Oh yeah,
like I remember like however old I was, 11, 12, like just being like, holy crap, like what is this? I got to check this out.
sure.
And then like there was a moment when I saw that trailer and I'm like, is that Fresh Prince in there? Right. And that was kind of like it, like, I feel like that movie would have done well no matter who was in it. Right. But that was an interesting added like icing on the cake for that. The fact that like the guy from Fresh Prince, which is a super popular show at the time, that like, at least in my age bracket, like we all loved it in school. Like we always talked about it on Tuesday mornings when we watched it the night before. And it was like, what is he going to do? Like, he's in this alien movie now. Like,
sure.
What's that going to be like? So yeah, so Independence Day was super fun for us. And I still look at that movie fondly with nostalgia. But there's two things in there that I think have also sort of changed over the years. And one is that Independence Day was a movie that like we didn't know was being made.
Yeah.
Right? Like we went to the theater to see something else. We saw a trailer for Independence Day and we're like, oh, this thing exists and will be coming out soon. And you went, holy crap, I got to go see this. This looks awesome. Right?
Right.
That is not really a thing so much anymore. Like you're very seldom, I think, surprised by a movie trailer in the theater. Like typically now, like we know movies that are coming out 3, even 4 years in advance now.
Right. Yeah, for Independence Day, my memories of it's a little different in my experience. Is I do remember them running a Super Bowl ad.
Mm-hmm.
So at the beginning of the year, and when Super Bowl, I think might have still been in end of January at that point in time. I can't remember if it had moved to February yet. But it was in the Super Bowl that they ran the first Independence Day trailer that showed the alien ship, that showed something blowing up. So that was like 6 months before the movie came out. And I just remember being blown away by that. I remember everybody who I knew who watched the Super Bowl reacting to that trailer 6 months out.
Right.
And being like, when's that coming out? Like, I can't wait to see that. And then being surprised that like, oh yeah, that's not coming out until the summer. Like we have to wait 6 months for this thing now. So that was a kind of new experience too.
There was also a weird thing because like the posters had like ID4. And I remember, for us at school, like there was a weird, like what's the movie called? There, like just for us, because we were 11 and stupid, you know what I mean? But it was like one of those things. It was like an odd thing for a movie to not have the name of the movie on the poster for a little while. And I just think it was kind of an interesting thing that a movie overcame, like, what's it called?
Right.
Back in 96. But the other thing that's kind of stands out about Independence Day is that for a while, I think that movie was kind of regarded as like the best special effects you had ever seen. Right? It was like certainly like that was the best, like most realistic looking effects you had seen in a movie at that point.
Well, Jurassic Park was 3 years before.
Yeah. And right, exactly. Jurassic Park, I think, was that before Independence Day, but like there was a reputation that these movies were starting to have where like the effects were getting more and more like, whoa, like blowing your mind and developing, I think, like what you could do in the art form.
Yeah, I have to agree with you with that one because that's definitely what came when The Matrix hit, especially for that type of. Every time we get a summer blockbuster, it's always a push towards how the special effects advances to the next level, like with T2.
Right.
Seeing the effects on how they do that and with the budget. It's always pushed to a higher budget is what we'd expect from the blockbusters.
Yeah, I was going to bring up T2 when Tommy was talking about that earlier. I remember that one being the one where people are like, I don't think we're never going to see anything more than we saw in T2. T2 blew people's minds. But yeah, and then until the next thing came along. I mean, I guess the other thing I think we got to talk about is like, we kind of have to talk about the Avatar in the room. Does anyone want to talk about Avatar?
Sure. Because
I mean, that was a huge movie. I've admittedly have never seen it, but I know lots of people did see it. So much so that it made as much money as it did.
Right.
It's now again the highest grossing movie of all time.
Yeah,
It eked back in front of Endgame.
Right.
I think what was interesting about that, and Tommy and I remember Tommy and I discussing it over the phone a long time ago, where Tommy, you were saying like, I just don't get like why James Cameron gets like all these, gets to do like whatever he wants.
I agree.
And my rebuttal to that was, I was like, Tommy, like he directed the highest grossing movie of all time, like by a mile.
Yeah.
And that record was never broken until he made another movie.
Right.
Which I just think is an interesting statistic. But I mean, that movie, say what you will about the story, I think it checks all those blockbuster boxes of
right.
You know, like it's a big, huge budget spectacle thing. There was a lot of buzz about that movie at the time that, you know, it was awesome. And it was, you know, not ironically, I heard the greatest movie ever made multiple times out of people's mouth.
People you knew?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. A lot of people I knew.
People you still talk to.
You know, it pushed what was possible. Like, you know, it had all these, you know, interesting new effects and ways to tell the story. It was kind of a resurgence in 3D also.
Was that the first? I'm trying to think. Was that like some of the first motion capture stuff, or was that before that?
I mean, there's been motion capture certainly in like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. Like it had existed.
Yeah, that was from 10 years earlier. So yeah, okay. Lord of the Rings was where some of the motion capture performances were really like boundary pushing.
Yeah.
But then they definitely did extensively in Avatar as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So much so that your leads were essentially CG motion capture leads the whole time, not just one, but multiple.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it is what it is with that movie.
Although the news that just broke this weekend is that Matt Damon admitted he turned it down.
Oh, really?
Yes. He just recently this past week came out saying that his one of his greatest career regrets was turning it down, and I believe I read 10% of profits.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, I read that
yeah.
too. He turned down 10% of the movie's gross profits. Yeah, which is insane. Yeah, he'd have been sitting on 100 mil easy.
Wow,
that's nuts.
Well, that still takes me back to the idea of like with Batman '89, the fact that Jack had the presence of mind, Jack Nicholson, to say, "Oh no, give me a percentage of what it makes."
Right.
And he made a ridiculous amount of money on that.
Yeah. And most notably, George Lucas is the greatest success story of that, where I believe the deal was like he just had them give him merchandising rights.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because nobody merchandised movies before that.
Nobody, not like that. Nobody believes in it like that.
Nobody saw any gold there, but he did and said, just give me that. And they were like, yeah, sure, whatever, man. Like, probably laughing behind his back at the time, and little did they know.
What a dope. Yeah.
You want to make toys of this? Yeah, sure, whatever.
Right.
No one's gonna buy that.
No.
Oh, how wrong were they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's changed a little, you know, over the decades and stuff, and now, you know, with the pandemic and everything like that, you know, this is sort of, I think, made everything sort of take major steps forward just to work around this, where you're getting like HBO Max has got movies that are dropping simultaneously in theater and on the streaming service, right? And
now part of membership,
right? It's part of membership, and everybody's kind of playing around with this a little bit.
Disney Plus has their premium, so you can buy those movies when they come out in theaters for an extra fee on the service.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with, like, I mean, movies are not going to not do the same business, I think. I think, you know, there will still be blockbusters. I just think there's going to be a difference in there's going to be split in the way that people watch it.
Right.
You know, I mean, we'll see also if that same day stuff sticks around once things start to get back to normal.
I think some of it's going to be around for good.
I think so too.
Yeah, I think some of it, I think the nature of viewing is just changing. Everybody's, I mean, some theaters are terrible and some home theaters are great.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But I just found it funny that, what's his name? When he directed Tenet, Christopher Nolan, he was, because he felt his movie should have been a summer blockbuster.
Right.
that he was part of the whole crew or the group of people who feel that you shouldn't stream it from home. You should be forced to watch the movie theater.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was very like bullish on it, right? He was very like cinema is awesome and it needs to, like, we're making it to be seen on a 70-foot screen.
Right.
Go see it that way. And then I've heard like other directors that are like, I remember James Gunn being like no, like I get what he's saying. Like, I'm making it to be seen on a giant screen too, but at the same time, I know that viewing habits are shifting.
Right.
And
like you can't dictate what the audience does.
Right. Yeah, I just think the convenience of it too. It's just to be able to do it from home from the push of a button.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to me, it's along the lines of like, it's like someone being in the 30s saying, "Oh no, it's meant to be read. You should read the dialogue lines." Why would I want to hear the actor's voice?
Sound is gonna kill the pictures.
Yeah, the talkies are just going to be the worst thing ever. Why would you ever want to hear them say the lines and actually in real time?
Right.
It's supposed to be met with dramatic music with a guy playing the organ in the corner. Like, give me a break. The whole Christopher Nolan thing always struck me as there must be some deal that you're losing out on, and I get it. If you signed a deal that you're supposed to get, a bonus for whatever for box office week, the weekend or whatever, I'd be annoyed too. But the main thing is that things change. I mean, it's the nature of how we take media in and stuff is always evolving.
Yeah,
and the idea that you're going to be the lone voice in the wind that's going to be like, no, it's got to stay the way. No, it's not going to stay the way it's always been. Yeah. There's no reason to believe that it would.
I think that there are ways to address his concerns too, because I know that he's very much, he was very into the technical aspects of it, where like at least the theaters is kind of a controlled setting where you're going to see it the way he's intending it, whereas like people have their TV settings off for differently in every home, so you may be getting that weird strobe effect, right? Well, I just think it's a way of like controlling that, like, so nobody's going around being like, oh, the effects are terrible, the movie looks. Right, but I mean, like, I feel like that there's ways that we can address this and sort of make sure that.
But then, by that token, why would you buy a Blu-ray or a DVD or whatever, a 4K or whatever? Because your TV settings are still going to be the same way. So I should just forego buying any of that stuff after the fact. I shouldn't subscribe to cable or to internet streaming service because it may look. I'm like, that's what you're telling me is the only way to see it pure in its pure form that Nolan intended is to go to the theater. And I don't believe that. I think that's a bunch of crap. Right. It's just the idea is, no, there has to be, to me, it doesn't strike me as anything other than there's got to be something there that you're losing out on because that's why you're upset. Because otherwise you don't have any complaints about, again, there's no complaining about, well, the blue may not look right because the contrast on your TV may not be right.
Right. So
I don't buy that. I think it's something to do with there's something he's losing out on because of it not being shown in theaters, and that's especially at the time of a pandemic. Get over yourself.
Right. We should point out that's your theory.
Oh yeah.
Also, right. We haven't read that anywhere. That's not right.
That's me. That's me. That's Frank Melman. I'm totally. That's attributed to me. I'm perfectly okay with Roman. I tell him to his face.
Right. That's your take, and you're sticking to it.
I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, like there are always like these film purists, and some, like, it was the film versus digital debate in people that were saying, I'm only ever going to shoot on film. Like the directors that are like, I'm only ever shooting on film because that's how they did it in the 30s or whatever, the 1930s, because we're coming up on that was a long time ago.
Right.
And these people still want to hold on to that era. And it is kind of like that. I do see, and because I was always one, I'm like, if it looks good on digital, like digital's a lot easier to shoot on,
sure,
than film. And so I was like, man, as long as it looks good in the end, like who cares? And most people viewing wouldn't be able to tell the difference between what's shot on good digital,
right,
and what's shot on film. Like what's shot on digital in the hands of a good filmmaker looks great.
Right.
And also just in cinemas just become so digital anyway. And so much of like even stuff shot on film is scanned into a computer, edited on a computer with visual effects made on a computer.
Yeah.
It's such a hybrid thing now. So I see it as kind of like that. Like you do get this old guard that just wants to hold on to an old time because that's how they saw it. That's how it was when they were envisioning it, and that's what they want. But yeah, like times change and things change. And pandemics forced change upon people that didn't want change.
Yeah.
And made it convenient for people that do.
Exactly. So yeah, so it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I mean, we're getting now around around the period where you know, the time we're recording this, Fast 9's in theaters now finally, and that was the first movie to delay its release, and it's doing well. It's doing really well.
Well, and Black Widow just opened, which is doing better.
And Black Widow just opened as well, and that was a simultaneous theater and Disney Plus release, and is also doing very, very well.
Right, so that's an interesting point. So it's Fast 9 was strictly theater release, and Black Widow was simultaneous theater release plus the Disney Premium we mentioned, where you can pay extra to your service to watch it, to unlock it, to watch it, and it still beat Fast 9 in the box office opening weekend,
right?
Even as a simultaneous release versus a theatrical only release. So I think that's interesting. So people, could have just stayed at home, which many people did, and stayed at home and watched this movie. And you still had enough people went out into the theater to beat a theater release exclusive movie.
Right.
And we do a lot of, everybody does. They do a lot of cheerleading. You look at the box office numbers, like what was the number one movie this weekend? And did it beat this other movie in its first opening weekend? And that's going to start to change too, like it has for TV, where we're not going to know those numbers coming up, because we know we know the estimate. We know the industry estimate of what Black Widow did in theaters. We have no clue how much it made on Disney Plus, and Disney Plus will never tell us how much it made. They'll just say it did great, and I'm sure it is doing great, but we'll never know beyond that. Like all the Netflix shows, we have no idea how many people are watching Netflix shows.
Yeah, I remember hearing as a sidebar, like when Netflix was doing a lot of like comedian specials and stuff like that. I remember hearing a lot of comedians talk about it. We're like, they won't tell us how many people are viewing our special. Like we ask them, and they're like, it's doing great.
You know, don't want that metric.
It's doing great. Keep doing it. Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think that is going to be a new thing to come about from it as well. And yeah, I mean, and it doesn't surprise me that Black Widow is outperforming Fast 9 a little bit. I have nothing against the Fast and Furious movies. Like, I've seen all of them. My wife and my sister-in-law love them. But I think the Marvel movies have a this is going to sound like I'm really throwing shade at Fast 9, and I'm not. But the Marvel movies have like a substantive aspect to it. We're excited about the story building up, and where's who are the new characters coming in, and where's the story going to go, and what are they setting up and everything. And Fast 9, even though we're talking about a movie a series that's now in its 9th installment
and has had spin-offs,
right, and has had spin-offs and is doing very, very well, I've never ever in my life overheard people talk about the story for any of the Fast and Furious movies. It's always been effects. It's been stunts. It's been
family.
Right. They don't theorize about when Dom is going to talk about family next in the next movie.
Yeah.
When are they going to fight Thanos? I mean, it's not like that. No, I mean, I think it's funny because I had I've had people that are I've got some friends that are very much in the camp of like, oh my god, like Fast 9 was like their big deal. The next Fast and Furious movie is a big deal to them. And that's great. Good for you. I mean, that's your bag. That's your thing. But I also know people who look at like Marvel Avengers movies and say those are like more like what we had growing up with like Star Wars movies, right? Those were the big things we look forward to. They were big event movies. They're big blockbusters, I guess you could say, even though people don't really have to wait in line all that much anymore. But I think with Marvel is, I think we're just, I think it's a unique time to be not even like a superhero like movie fan. I just think I'm a fan in general because as we have with Disney Plus feeding into these movies and the movies and the universes itself going along, we just don't really, there's nothing to really compare it to, I don't think.
Right.
From the standpoint of like, because I think one thing I think that's interesting about Marvel, especially now that when they first got started, was, people are starting to get the point of like, well, can I skip this one? Do I need to see this one? Is it important? And I thought I've seen that kind of thing like with some of the Disney Plus shows. Well, do I need to see that? Like, what do I need to see before this? What do I need to see after it? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that was again not throwing shade at Star Wars, but it's going to sound like I am. Like that was the thing that got, as a fan, a little cumbersome with Star Wars is always having the conversation of this takes place between this and this, and where is this, right? And always having to figure out like where it fell in this timeline, and that wasn't a thing with Marvel for the longest time, where like it just like everyone that you saw was like the next one, the next one, the next one.
Right.
And now you're getting into a point where like, Black Widow is after Civil War and
Right.
or between these two movies and stuff like that. And yeah, I do wonder, there's a point where I think it can be a lot for fans to start to do all the homework themselves.
Right.
But I'm not there. I'm
I'm not either.
I'm in for everything Marvel. I want more.
Yeah.
I want more of it.
Yeah, the funny thing about the Star Wars one, though, is like, so Star Wars, big hit, inspired a Japanese anime series that's famous and long running ever since, which is the Gundam series.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Gundam series in Japan, starts with a series about this war, this fictional intergalactic war, solar system war. And then they just started cranking out series, but they started doing series that would take place in different times. And they would put the year in the title often. So it would be like UC0081. So you'd know like what year in the war this was taking place, and they wouldn't put them out in order. Some would take place before others. And then Star Wars started doing that themselves. So I thought it was funny that like Star Wars kind of became the thing that was inspired by Star Wars in a way. Right. Of like, we'll tell this story that takes place between these years of the war, and everyone will go along with it because that was a Gundam thing first.
So, all right. So, any final thoughts before we start closing out? Anybody have a memory they're chomping to say about when they saw Tremors or something?
That was probably one I didn't see until video, honestly.
Okay, no, I know, me too. I saw it on Fox.
It's on the theater.
That's like for our episode of cult classics, things that bombed and then still became hits. We can do an episode on that another time.
Yeah,
that was a midnight showing. That was we got to check the print, make sure the print's okay. Let's go get nachos and come back and watch Tremors.
Okay.
So our favorite cult movies will be a topic.
That's sometime. A good idea. We should do that.
Now, other than, I mean, the only thing is I've told this story a couple times of being, being on restriction or being grounded and not being able to see Blockbuster.
Mm.
Oh, that was your punishment.
Yeah.
Like that's how your parents hit you where it hurts.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I didn't get to see. I didn't get to see Search for Spock.
Right.
In the theater because I don't, again, no idea what the transgression was, and I didn't get to see Temple of Doom. But I do think Temple of Doom was more tied to the idea that it was PG-13.
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to see it for a long time either.
They were doing you a favor on that one.
Anything goes. So, that was a punishment. Like for a couple of years, that was a big punishment. I was allowed to see movies, and my parents knew that I was dying to see. So, but again, I can't recall what I did to get in trouble.
Right. That is clever, though.
Just that the punishment hurt.
Frankie, you know what you did. No Karate Kid Part 2 for you.
Yeah, it hit me where I lived, so it worked. I mean, it was, whatever it was, it only lasted twice, 2 summers, and then I was like, all right, I think I would be good.
You learned your lesson.
Yeah, scared straight. So,
all right. So we're going to start calling it, but to close out, what we're going to do is we're going to look ahead to some of the movies that are coming out over the next, the rest of this year, maybe into next year. We're going to say which ones we think have like blockbuster potential. But first, if you like the show, you can check out all of our episodes on YouTube at letmeknowhowitis.com. Just please, however you find us, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. And finally, if you have any ideas for a topic on the show, send them our way on Twitter or in the comments. Our Twitter handle is our show's initials, LMKHII. All right. So which movies for the back half of 2021 and into 2022 do we think have blockbuster potential?
Oh, can I go?
Yeah. And you can do more than one, whatever you got. Like, just leave some for the rest of us.
Oh, no, I was going to say, wow. I was just going to say one. I was going to say Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's got Blockbuster written all over it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I think Suicide Squad is gonna end up being like such an important movie for the DC like slate of stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So it's rated R, right?
Yes.
I believe so, yes.
Okay, yeah. And that's another interesting thing is there used to be a cap on how well a rated R movie would do. Like we were talking about before, there weren't that many that broke out until Passion of the Christ, then Deadpool, then Joker. But now like that cap seems to have slid up and up and up and up and not really be a cap anymore on how well a movie can do. But
that's interesting too, is the idea that the R-rated movie was a thing that was a staple for a while, and then more and more, whether it was editing or just not making movies that were aimed to be an R-rated thing, became less and less. Because I think, again, the shifting to, PG-13, just, sort of like the idea like we could skirt some of the stuff that would be in an R-rated movie, but not quite go that far.
Right. Like if it just takes cutting out like a word or two, then they'll do it to get PG-13.
It also meant that, that if your movie was PG-13, you would make, more money because all the 13-year-olds were going to see it.
Sure.
Like, I remember that was very much a conversation for Live Free and Die Hard.
Mm-hmm.
I remember where, Die Hard 1, 2, and 3 are all, solid rated R movies. And then the fourth one comes out years and years and years after the fact. And it's a PG-13 movie and everyone's like, huh?
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, I remember reading an article somewhere in like some magazine talking about, I can't remember where it was, but talking about the idea that, there was a conscious choice to get sort of a rating in between the two because there was a lot of quote unquote babysitting money that was out there that wasn't going to be put towards an R-rated movie because they couldn't see it.
Right.
Yeah. There's also a lot of money too at that time. I think I didn't read this anywhere, but I'm just assuming there's a lot of money at the time in like unrated cuts of movies on DVD at the time too. So I don't know if that was also a factor for that, but yeah, Tommy, I'm with you. Suicide Squad. And I can't wait for it. I cannot wait for this movie. Yeah, I think that's going to be a really big movie.
Yeah.
I thought about like maybe like do we want to like make this into a bet between all of us, like who's right, like who picks, but yeah, I couldn't think of stakes for it.
Yeah, I mean it's still hard to say because we don't know for sure what the box office conditions are going to be for the rest of this year. We know, like you said, stuff's opening up at the time of this recording and stuff's getting stronger each weekend at the time of this recording. We get 4 Marvel movies this year. One we've gotten already, in addition to the 3 Marvel shows we've mostly already gotten so far this year. And then of the Marvel movies that are left, 2 of them are kind of untested. So I don't expect them to be the huge blockbusters like Black Panther was out of the gate. We had been introduced to him, and then that was just a movie that, hit right when it needed to hit, I think.
Right.
And of the ones left, like we got Shang-Chi, we got Eternals, I think they're going to do well. I think they're going to do solid, like some of the other Marvel stuff they've done, even when people haven't been too familiar with characters like Guardians and Ant-Man. Ant-Man ended up doing pretty well, especially overseas, the first one. But I think, the Spider-Man has of the Marvel stuff has the chance to do the biggest box office, which comes out in December. Spider-Man No Way Home, December 17th.
That was my choice too. I thought just from the fact that it's, however, we have not, at this point as recorded this, we've not seen the last episode of Loki. I'm not going to spoil it because everyone hasn't seen everything yet, but I'm just saying depending on how that ends and all the rumors about No Way Home could be a really big movie for this. So I don't know, but that's my choice. I think that's the one that's going to be of the Marvel slate that's left. I would say that's probably the biggest one.
Yeah. I agree. I think Spider-Man's going to be a big deal. The trouble with, we've all been home for so long is Black Panther. I got a sense of how big it was going to be before it came out, just from, when there's like people that I didn't think associated with sort of like the big budget, like action movie, right? When I'm talking like, I'm hearing 60-year-old women talk about like how excited they are for Black Panther. I was like, this movie's going to be huge.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right. and that's the thing about Shang-Chi that's making me curious. I'm curious about like how big is the buzz for it really? That we're just not like, if we were out walking around and talking to people at work and stuff like that, like would the buzz be like palpably bigger than it is? I think Shang-Chi can surprise a lot of us.
It looks good.
The one I'm hoping for is the new Bond movie.
Right.
No Time to Die. That's the one I'm really hoping for. I think that has some things lining up here that might cause it to be kind of a big movie. One, it's that, Daniel Craig's final outing, and and he's been I think a fan favorite Bond among most of the viewers, and I think people are going to just be interesting to see what his last outing is going to be. Rami Malek is an actor that's certainly gaining steam and having a reputation of like, I just want to see him in something, right? Like he's developing as one of those actors. So to see him as the bad guy, I think is going to be cool.
It also has Ana de Armas, who teamed up with Daniel Craig in Knives Out, which was fantastic. And I'm always excited to see her. Exactly.
And it just looks beautifully shot. Like, it and it looks like it's playing around. I mean, I want to do a Bond episode so bad to get into this stuff more, but like, Bond has a formula and we love it for that. But this one looks like it's kind of, it's playing, it's stretching the boundaries a little bit of what the formula is, at least from the trailers. And so I think that this one can be kind of seismic. Mm-hmm. But we'll see. I mean, this is also one of the ones that, this movie's been delayed like 3 times. So
what is its current date?
It's out in October. I don't know what the actual date is, but we're still a couple of months out.
Okay.
And my hope is that they don't just rush through it, because I think everybody's also a little excited about like who's going to be the next Bond after him.
Mm.
Okay, it's October 8th. I see.
October 8th. Okay.
Directed by Cary Joji Fukunaga, who's good.
Yeah, he's True Detective.
Yes.
I wanted to bring it up, but I was too afraid to try and pronounce his name because I knew I was going to screw it up. But he's another one. I think he's another factor that could lend itself to this being, one of the better ones, I think. So hopefully it does well. I know I'm seeing it. So anything else that out there that we think about?
We'll see if Dune actually succeeds this time.
Okay.
Its first attempt in the theaters was not too successful, so we'll see if a possibly unfilmable movie was filmable this time.
Right.
We'll find out in October 22nd.
Well, it certainly checks one of the boxes already, right? They're spending money on this movie.
Yeah.
This is a spectacle movie for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll see how it does. It's going to be interesting. So, okay, listeners, chat us up on Twitter or in the comments and let us know what you think is going to be an unexpected blockbuster. As always, we'll post links and examples to everything we talk about on letmeknowhowitis.com. Please remember to like us and follow us on social media, and we will see you guys next week. Thanks for listening.